Have you ever noticed how some men effortlessly command respect and admiration from women, while others remain perpetually friend-zoned or taken for granted? The difference isn't about looks, money, or status. It's about something far more fundamental: boundaries. In a world where men are often taught to be endlessly accommodating, setting clear boundaries has become a lost art. Today, I'm going to reveal the 5 essential boundaries that will transform how women perceive, interact with, and ultimately respect you. 1. Valuing your time. Time is the only truly non-renewable resource we possess. Once spent, it can never be recovered. Yet so many men treat their time as if it holds no value, making themselves perpetually available at a moment's notice. They interrupt important work to respond to texts immediately, cancel plans with friends when she suddenly becomes available, and rearrange their entire schedule to accommodate her whims. This behavior doesn't inspire respect. It communicates that you have nothing of importance happening in your life, and that her time inherently matters more than yours. A man who genuinely values his time creates a completely different impression. He maintains a purposeful, engaging life that continues whether she's present or not. He doesn't anxiously wait by the phone for her messages or drop everything when she calls. Instead, he operates on his own schedule, responding when it's convenient for him, not out of rudeness, but out of self-respect. He politely declines last-minute invitations when they conflict with prior commitments, suggesting alternative times that work within his existing framework. This man understands that his time is a reflection of his life energy, and he allocates it deliberately rather than reactively. Women are naturally drawn to and respect this quality because it signals independence, confidence, and purpose. It creates healthy tension and interest because your attention becomes something earned rather than expected. Think about it. We value what we work for, not what's freely given without condition. When you honor your time boundaries, you implicitly communicate that while you enjoy her company, your world is complete regardless of her presence. This paradoxically makes her want to be part of that world even more, approaching you with genuine respect rather than casual entitlement. 2. Setting financial boundaries. Money doesn't just buy things, it reveals priorities, values, and self-perception. How you handle your finances in relation to women speaks volumes about how you view yourself and the relationship dynamic you're establishing. Many men fall into the pattern of excessive spending, believing the path to a woman's heart runs through her material desires. They empty their bank accounts on lavish dates, unnecessary gifts, and experiences beyond their means, thinking this generosity will translate to appreciation and affection. What these men don't realize is that this behavior often achieves the opposite effect. Instead of building respect, it creates an unsustainable precedent where your worth becomes tied to what you can provide materially. The relationship turns transactional rather than emotional, setting up a dynamic where you're valued for your wallet, not your character. Even worse, this pattern attracts women who are looking for providers rather than partners, filtering for those who seek what you can give rather than who you are. A man with solid financial boundaries approaches relationships differently. He lives within his means and doesn't attempt to impress with displays of wealth that exceed his actual circumstances. He's comfortable suggesting activities that fit his budget and doesn't feel the need to apologize for it. In early relationships, he maintains financial separation, understanding that entangled finances create complicated dependencies. He's generous within reason, but expects equitable contribution appropriate to each person's situation. Most importantly, he makes financial decisions based on his long-term goals and values rather than short-term approval. Women respect this approach because it demonstrates confidence, authenticity, and responsibility. It shows you're a man who can't be manipulated through material expectations or guilt. Financial boundaries communicate that while you're willing to invest in shared experiences, you won't be defined or controlled by money. This security and clarity are far more attractive than fleeting extravagance that comes with hidden expectations attached. 3. Maintaining your social independence. Human connections form the fabric of a fulfilling life, yet many men make the critical mistake of dismantling their entire social world when they become interested in a woman. They gradually abandon long-term friendships, drop meaningful hobbies, and isolate themselves from their support network. Believing this demonstrates commitment, their social calendar becomes entirely dependent on her availability, and they lose touch with the very people and activities that shaped their identity before she entered the picture. This social surrender might seem romantic in theory, but in practice, it creates an unhealthy dynamic that erodes respect. When you abandon your social circles for a relationship, you place an impossible burden on one person to fulfill all your social and emotional needs. You become less interesting because you're no longer engaged with the diverse perspectives and experiences that previously enriched your life. Most damagingly, you signal that you lack the confidence to maintain your individuality within a relationship. A man with strong social boundaries approaches relationships as an addition to his life, not a replacement for it. He maintains regular connections with friends who knew him before the relationship and doesn't need permission to spend time with them. He continues pursuing personal interests and hobbies that may not involve his partner, understanding that these activities contribute to his well-being and personal growth. He values one-on-one time with his partner, but doesn't abandon the rich tapestry of relationships that supported him before she arrived. He remains an individual within the partnership, maintaining his unique identity rather than being absorbed into a nebulous we that erases his personhood. Women deeply respect this independence because it demonstrates security and emotional maturity. A man with social boundaries isn't clingy or possessive because his sense of self doesn't depend entirely on the relationship. This creates a healthier dynamic where both parties choose to be together rather than need to be together. It also ensures that you bring fresh energy, ideas, and experiences to the relationship rather than creating a closed loop of mutual dependency that eventually stagnates. The respect earned through social independence paradoxically strengthens the relationship by preventing the resentment that inevitably develops when individuality is sacrificed. 4. Communicating your deal breakers. Every person has fundamental values, needs, and non-negotiables that define their character and guide their choices. These aren't preferences or wishes, but core principles that, when compromised, lead to resentment, loss of self-respect, and ultimately relationship failure. Despite this, many men remain silent about their deal breakers, fearing that expressing boundaries will drive a woman away. They pretend to be comfortable with situations that deeply violate their values, agree with opinions they don't share, and tolerate disrespect in hopes of maintaining harmony or avoiding conflict. This avoidance strategy invariably backfires. Without clear boundaries, women are left to test limits constantly, creating a dynamic of pushing and probing rather than mutual understanding. You become a shifting target rather than a solid presence, making it impossible to build genuine trust. Most destructively, each time you fail to communicate a crossed boundary, you train both yourself and her that your needs don't matter, gradually eroding your position in the relationship until you become a passive participant rather than an equal partner. A man who communicates clear deal breakers creates a completely different dynamic. He articulates his expectations early and directly, not as demands, but as honest expressions of what works for him. He doesn't angrily defend these boundaries, but calmly maintains them, willing to respectfully disagree without seeking approval. When a line is crossed, he addresses it immediately rather than harboring silent resentment. Most importantly, he's willing to enforce consequences when fundamental boundaries are violated, including walking away from situations or relationships that consistently disregard his core needs, regardless of how physically or emotionally attached he might be. Women profoundly respect this clarity because it provides safety through predictability. A man who communicates boundaries isn't playing games or sending mixed signals. He's providing a clear framework for interaction. This directness eliminates the exhausting process of trying to guess what you're thinking or feeling. It also signals confidence and self-knowledge, qualities essential to healthy relationships. The paradox of clear boundaries is that rather than pushing people away, they actually create the psychological safety necessary for genuine intimacy to develop, allowing both parties to be authentic rather than strategic in their interactions. 5. Protecting your purpose and vision. The most respected men throughout history share one common trait. They lived in service to something greater than themselves. Whether that purpose manifested as a creative vision, professional ambition, spiritual practice, or contribution to community, they maintained an unwavering commitment to their core mission. This sense of purpose provides direction, meaning, and fulfillment that can never be derived solely from relationships, no matter how loving or supportive. Yet many men abandon their deeper calling when romance enters the picture, allowing their goals and aspirations to be gradually replaced by the relationship itself. This sacrifice seems noble on the surface, but ultimately leads to a loss of respect, both self-respect and the respect of your partner. When you surrender your purpose for a relationship, you lose the very drive and passion that made you attractive in the first place. You become defined by the relationship rather than your character and contributions. Over time, this creates a vacuum of identity that breeds dependency, insecurity, and resentment. No woman wants the burden of being your sole source of meaning and direction. It's an impossible responsibility that crushes authentic connection. A man who protects his purpose establishes different priorities. He carves out sacred time for his work and aspirations, treating them as non-negotiable commitments rather than optional activities. He seeks partners who enhance his mission rather than distract from it, understanding that true compatibility means shared respect for each other's purpose, not just emotional or physical chemistry. He doesn't allow criticism or momentary disapproval to derail his long-term vision, maintaining perspective during inevitable conflicts. Most importantly, he makes relationship decisions that align with his greater purpose, recognizing that compromising his core mission will ultimately damage both his fulfillment and the relationship itself. Women instinctively respect this dedication to purpose because it demonstrates inner strength and authentic character. A man driven by something beyond himself isn't easily manipulated by approval or rejection because his worth isn't determined solely by others' perceptions. This creates a dynamic where a woman chooses to join your journey rather than becoming the journey itself, aligning with your purpose rather than replacing it. The relationship becomes a powerful partnership of two complete individuals moving in a shared direction, rather than two incomplete people desperately trying to fill each other's voids. The ultimate truth about boundaries is that they aren't walls designed to keep people out. They're frameworks that define who you are and what matters to you. By establishing these 5 essential boundaries, you create the foundation for genuine respect, not just from women, but from everyone you encounter. Remember that respect isn't demanded or begrudgingly given. It's naturally offered to those who first respect themselves. These boundaries aren't tactics or techniques, but authentic expressions of self-worth that communicate your value without saying a word. Real transformation begins when you realize that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy, balanced relationships. And the greatest paradox of all, the clearer your boundaries become, the deeper and more meaningful your connections with others will grow.